Good evening. My name is Terry Iman, and I am the President and CEO of the Lupus Foundation of America, Georgia chapter. And we are thrilled to have you join us tonight for a special presentation about lupus in the family. So we thought up this program after a trip to the Georgia State Capitol. And we just saw a really cool interaction between a young woman who's living with lupus and her family, and then a young man who has a mom who's living with lupus. And we just thought to bring those two perspectives together and really treat this like it is a family affair. I think oftentimes when we look at lupus, we look at it through the lens of a person living with lupus, and we don't look at the effects on the family. And the effects are far-reaching, and they can be positive. I know Sophia, who is going to be one of our speakers tonight, once talked about how she gained empathy through her diagnosis with lupus. And I was so impressed for a 14-year-old young lady to say that. It was just really cool. But we're going to talk about, some of the needs of families living with lupus and this is not letting me get, and just present a dialogue. Tonight is going to be a nice and easy going session where we're just going to share ideas and let people join in if they want to. So before we go on, I want to just thank our sponsors tonight, Aurinia and GSK. We have with us tonight, we have Quinn Cousin from Aurinia, and we have Catherine Blackwell from GSK. And I'm going to let them speak in a little bit after I just talk about the chapter for a bit. But we are so grateful for the work that they're doing. And they're doing great work with the Lupus Foundation, but they're doing so much work beyond that into dealing with health disparities and getting into communities and really trying to reach those who are most marginalized by this disease. And every opportunity that they bring to me is just eye-opening, and we feel blessed as a chapter to have their input and to work in partnership with them. So the Lupus Foundation of America, the Georgia chapter, I'll go through these quickly, but I think it's important to understand what we do. Our strategic priorities are to reduce the time to diagnosis, ensure that lupus patients have safe and effective treatments, and expand our direct services, increase access to treatment and care. These are the core priorities developed at the national level that stream down to us, that we implement here in Georgia. So how do we improve health outcomes for people living with lupus? That is our main goal. Everything we do points to that. Every time we develop a program, an event, everything has to be about how we improve health outcomes for people living with lupus. First, we try to reduce the time to diagnosis. And we do that by educating people. We educate community health workers. We have an initiative where we are communicating with and certifying community health workers across the state of Georgia. And that is so that we can get into rural communities and get into those healthcare clinics. And they are the boots on the ground, looking to identify people that not only are newly diagnosed, but those who might not be diagnosed yet, who might have the signs and symptoms, and they can help us put the pieces together. Another huge initiative of ours is our school health outreach program. We're educating nurses about lupus and making sure that they're an integral part. The school nurse is an integral part of the care team. So you've got the parents, you've got the child, you've got the family doctor, you've got the rheumatologist. We're bringing the school into it because that's where they're spending the majority of their time. So it's important for them to really understand what lupus is. And when a child comes to them and says, I can't go out in the sun, or I'm tired, or my knees ache, that they understand the implications of those symptoms and really get it. It's also part of that initiative is to identify that child that does walk in from recess, who is exhausted with red rash all over their face and talking about their knees hurting and that. Maybe that's somebody that they say to the parents, you might want to look into this a little bit more. So we provide them with resources. Next, we have a Be Fierce Take Control campaign on HBCU campuses. We actually have one tomorrow at Clark Atlanta University. And Quinn and Catherine are going to be there with our operations manager and one of our ambassadors to present information about lupus. We've got to reach people where they are. And an awful lot of young women are walking around with achy joints and thinning hair, and maybe a little bit of depression, and maybe being exhausted. And they think, I'm just not taking care of myself. And we don't want them to point it towards themselves. We want them to look into it, put those pieces together and see if it's lupus. If it's not lupus, praise God. But if it is, let's get them on into a good protocol. Our lupus ambassador training, and we have 2 of our ambassadors on here tonight. Catherine Stuff and Sophia Galvez are both ambassadors, and they speak for us at events across Georgia. This is really an important initiative to get people who are well-versed, who really know what lupus is and how it affects them, and speak on behalf of the community. Second, we ensure lupus patients have safe and effective treatments. So we increased lupus advocate participation. And everybody on this call was down at the Capitol on February the 23rd, when we went and we called on our legislators to really keep us in mind whenever they're making any healthcare decisions. Lupus patients should be considered. Got an email from a young woman yesterday who is in our Macon area, and she sent an email to Ralph Warnock, and he wrote back to her, and he was very specific about what lupus was and how he's fighting for us and how he is considering everything. And he went in, he mentioned the Department of Defense, the NIH, the CDC. So he really knew what he was talking about and took the time to elaborate on that. So our advocacy efforts are making a difference, and we'll just continue to fight. Support the Lupus Foundation Research Program. And if you visit lupus.org, Ray, this is really about how lupus research can be accelerated by you. And it's really getting data to understand how lupus affects people and pulling out empirical data from that. We don't want to be guessing what's going on. We really want to get numbers so that we can truly understand what's going on with lupus, with people living with lupus. Promote LFA-supported clinical trials. Continue education on the clinical trial participation. This is so important. We can't design drugs for specific populations unless there is participation in those clinical trials. And that's one of our big initiatives this year, to get involved with that. Expand direct services and increase access to treatment and care. Okay. We're expanding our emergency financial program, our emergency financial assistance program. We have tripled the amount of money that we have given out in grants this year from last year. And that is a direct correlation to hiring a patient navigator who is working with those patients who really are the most in need. They're the ones who are missing doctor's appointments, who aren't filling their medications, who aren't doing that. It's important for us to take those people that are slipping through the cracks. And one of them is supported, the patient navigator program is supported through a grant from Aurinia, and we're really grateful for that grant. We're targeting people living with lupus nephritis, because what they have, they come to the doctor when they're in acute flare with their lupus nephritis. They get better and they stop taking their medications oftentimes. They go into denial. Very, very, very human thing to do. It's a very human thing to do. But what our patient navigator is doing is she's making sure they stay engaged. She's re-engaged. She's calling those people and saying, you missed your appointment or you didn't get your meds refilled, and trying to see what those barriers are. And those barriers can be all sorts of things. They can be transportation, housing, food. So we provide resources around each and every one of those. And we have a support group network. So our support group network is important because it's important for us to connect people living with lupus with other people living with lupus. You know, I can stand up and I can talk about what lupus is. I can talk about the signs and symptoms. I can have empathy and share and give you resources. But when two people with lupus talk to each other, they're talking a different language. I've seen it happen so often. I've seen it just turn and they're taught that when somebody living with lupus turns to another person living with lupus and says, I'm tired, they can say, I get it. And they get it in a way that maybe other people may not get it. So this is our patient navigator program. We have Alondra Zapata with us, and she's graduating with her MPH from Emory in a couple of weeks, and we're crossing our fingers that we can hold on to her because we want to keep her. And she is at the Grady Lupus Clinic, and she's at the Emory Midtown Nephritis Clinic. And once again, this is sponsored by Aurinia. And then we got a staff here. We've got a full-time staff, 4 of us full-time. And then we've got 4 part-time. And we just have a wonderful staff that is here to help. So anytime you need anything, I hope you know, call us. Give us a call. We're here to help. We've got lots of resources. And last but not least, we've got the lupus.org Research Center. This is it's slid off this was a slide I just created. It's a lupus resource. It's a resource center on lupus, and it's at lupus.org/resources. You can go to this site and plug in any word. You can plug in kidneys, and you'll get 30 articles about kidneys. You can plug in family, and it'll give you a bunch of articles about coping with lupus as a family. And this is important to have these resources for people living with lupus. Then we have another program in May. So May is Lupus Awareness Month. And in May, we have the 31 Faces of Hope. So we highlight them. And Sophia and Catherine, you both have been highlighted before in this program. It's just a great way to share stories. And we work with somebody in the who's a lobbyist who works down at the Georgia State Capitol. And she said, patient stories move policy. They really need to hear those stories. They really need to hear how lupus affects your family, how it affects you. And it's important. So she's got this initiative, 31 Faces of Hope, and we've had a bunch of people sign up for it. So keep your eye out. We'll be posting one story every day through the month of May for Lupus Awareness Month. And of course, I would be remiss not to talk about our upcoming walk. We've got a walk coming up on April the 29th down at Piedmont Park, and Arini is going to be there, and GSK is going to be there, and a lot of other people. So we plan to go down there and hang out with about 3,000 of our best friends on Saturday, April 29th. If you're free, join us, come down. It is, we talk here as a staff, it's like the wedding day. It is, we prepare for this, people fundraise, people they work so hard to come to our awareness programs, our education programs. We go down there, that's the day we let the world know that lupus matters. That's important. We're going to turn Piedmont Park purple, and we're going to turn the city of Atlanta purple. We already turned the Capitol purple, so we're just covering the state, one little section at a time. So we're going to get there. So now I would like to take time to let our sponsors speak here. And first up, we have Catherine Blackwell, and she is our representative here in Georgia for GSK. And they've been partnering with us for years, and we're so grateful for the resources that we bring. But I have to tell you, with Catherine and Quinn, I'm grateful for your friendship, and I'm grateful for your support. You bring so much to every conversation and to every presentation that you give. And it's so important for our lupus community to know that they've got you guys behind them. And that's important. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Catherine. And Catherine, do you want to share your screen, or do you want to just talk?
Yeah, I'm just going to talk. I don't have any slides or anything prepared.
Okay.
Okay, so hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here and see all of your beautiful faces. And I am thankful for Terry's friendship as well as the Lupus Foundation of America, Georgia. They do a lot of good stuff. So I'm very happy to be a part of that. So I am a registered nurse, and I am also a patient engagement liaison with GSK. And we have a team of nurses all over the state, and I cover the southeast part of the country. And we go around and educate patients and caregivers on lupus. And we have a lot of resources. We have, and Terry posts this out on her website monthly, we have monthly webinars. And it's either myself or, excuse me, some of my other nursing colleagues. And we talk about, we have, everything is unbranded, so it's not like a sales pitch or anything like that. We don't deal with that at all. We talk about, men with lupus, teens with lupus, caregivers of patients with lupus. We have a basic 101 what is lupus and, how do I deal with it? So we have a lot of different webinars that we have, and, at different times of the day. Sometimes they're at noon, sometimes they're at 4 in the afternoon, sometimes it's 7, to just try to get, a lot of the West Coast folks that want to join, excuse me. And they're also recorded, so you can go back and listen to them if you missed that, the time slot. They're free. It just takes your time. And then we also have a website, usandlupus.com, as well as gskplacehub.com. And if you go to those websites, they've got a lot of different QR codes. We've got a really, really neat selection of resources for you. We do a lot of, we have cookbooks, recipes on nutrition. We have journaling, health journaling. We have some things that you can download and actually get started on doing your own health journal. Lots and lots of resources that you can just go in there, type in a search, and type in what you're looking for, and something should come up. So that's it for me. We do a lot of, exhibits and walks and things like that. And we're really going to be hopping in May because it's Lupus Awareness Month. So we're just gearing up for that. And I think that's all I have. So Terry, if you want to turn it over to my friend down there, Quinn.
We go. Well, Catherine, thank you so much. And that Us and Lupus is an important resource. And there's lots and lots and lots of resources, even like coping with lupus and families in lupus, just a lot caregivers. So it is a great resource, as are the webinars.
Yeah, and we also have the symptoms tracking kits, tools that you can, do different tracking mechanisms, whatever works for you. So check it out.
Hey, just now, quickly, what is the other website? You talked about Us and Lupus, and then you talked about?
It's gskplacehub.com. They'll both take you to the resources, but I just wanted to mention that there are two, because sometimes if you go to usandlupus.com, it might refer you to gskplacehub.com and vice versa. So either way, you're going to get to the resources.
There you go.
And they're all free.
That's nice. That's nice, and that's valuable to people living with lupus.
Yeah.
Heather, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for partnering with us. And we're going to have a panel discussion after this, so we'll be joining back in here.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Now I would like to introduce Quinn Cousin. Quinn is our representative for Aurinia. And Aurinia, we worked with Aurinia for years, but starting in July of 2021, we started this patient navigator program. And we're just amazed at the people that we've reached. I think we're up to we're over 100 patients that our patient navigator is following. And she, like I said, she gives them phone calls to remind them to go to their doctor's appointment. She provides them with Uber help to get to the doctors, parking vouchers if they drive the car and they have to park, resources for whether they need food stamps or they need discount medications. Sometimes she's referring them to a social worker, but it's been a great program, and we have really appreciated all of their support. And Quinn, if you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Aurinia.
Sure, I can do it one of two ways. I can share my screen because we have slides, or I can just talk like Catherine did. It's really whatever you think might work best.
It's up to you. We have. You've got a good 15-20 minutes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Terry, for having me. And it's been my great pleasure to get to know you and to work with the LFA. This is what I call meaningful work. It's probably the best job that I've had, in the sense of I get to try to put together resources for people every day who are living with this disease. So Aurinia is focused on the lupus nephritis aspect of lupus. And again, everything that we do is also unbranded. So we have, lots of educational resources as well. I think probably the number one thing that we're trying to focus on right now is health disparities, and really trying to close that gap and trying to make sure that, even patients who have a different socioeconomic situation going on, that doesn't preclude them to being able to afford their meds, or like Terry said, they have, some people are homeless. and they have lupus. And so they have housing needs. Some people, need electricity. Some people need a ride. It can be as simple as that. But for that patient, for us, it's simple. For them, it's not. And so what I try to do all day long is connect the dots for people and help them understand what the resources are. And we're so excited to be partnering with the LFA and providing, some of these resources so that patients feel heard and that they get the help that they need. One of our big campaigns is called Get Uncomfortable. And the reason why we presented this campaign is because, and I'll share my screen in a second because it's only going to take me a few minutes to go over the information, is because we realized that what was happening was that people were being diagnosed with lupus nephritis, and they weren't necessarily getting their proteinuria levels down to what's acceptable, to be honest with you, so that they would not go into kidney failure. So that's been our big educational push. But we also have an educational resource called All In for Lupus Nephritis, and it's a website that is much like what Catherine described, where we have educational events, we have patient resources, we have caregiver resources, we have on one of our platforms, we have a doctor finder tool, because that's sometimes an issue of trying to find people who actually care for you in a respectful and I would call it a guidelines approach way. So to make sure that you get the best care possible. So I'm going to share my screen so I can just show you guys some of what it is that I'm talking about briefly. Because sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. And it's just easier. So can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's go for presentation mode. Well, now you can do all you want to set these slides up, and then they do what they want to do. So let's start at the beginning. Okay, so as I described earlier, lupus nephritis is really lupus, in the kidneys. And like I said earlier, we want to make sure that people take the time and make sure that they get their kidneys tested. And we know that lupus attacks just about every cell of the body. The inflammation caused by lupus can affect, all parts, the brain, the joints, the skin, the kidneys, the lungs. And, obviously, like I've said, is that when it affects the kidneys, it's called lupus nephritis. And, one of the things that we know about lupus nephritis is that, about 50% of the people living with lupus may go on to develop lupus nephritis. So it's really important to make sure that patients get, tested. And we know that there's inflammation involved in lupus nephritis, and we want to make sure that I'll make sure I'm not going backwards. There we go. That this inflammation doesn't cause permanent damage. But if you don't get your kidneys tested on a regular basis, to one, determine whether or not you have lupus nephritis, and then two, if you do have it, to make sure that you are getting the test quarterly as suggested by the EULAR guidelines, to make sure that you stop the disease in its tracks and that it doesn't go on to progress. Because you don't want to go on to kidney failure and or dialysis or a transplant. And I always say to the doctors that I talk to is, let's try to save native kidneys. Let's not send people to dialysis chairs unnecessarily and on to transplants. Let's fight for what's native to the body already. We know that there are, approximately 100,000 people in the United States living with lupus nephritis. And, unfortunately, a sad fact is that about 1 in 3 people are diagnosed with lupus nephritis at the time of their lupus diagnosis. And what we also know is that, people of color, people of African and Asian descent have a 4 times higher increase of developing lupus and lupus nephritis, and a 2 times higher incidence for Hispanics and Native people. We also know that lupus and lupus nephritis tends to affect women more than men. So some uncomfortable facts are that 1 in 3 people living with lupus nephritis will experience kidney failure if they don't get their kidneys tested. As I mentioned, the guidelines recommend routine testing at least every 3 months. And again, this is so you and your doctor can monitor your kidney health. And, you know, the risk of death is 3 times greater in patients living with lupus nephritis than those just living with lupus alone. So this fact right here is what motivates me every day, is to make sure that people know how serious this is and that they do what they need to do, not what they want to do, but what they need to do in order to make sure they maintain their kidney health. So some of the complications related to lupus and lupus nephritis are increased blood pressure, chronic kidney disease, cardiovascular complications, and kidney failure. So again, if we catch it early, we can really prevent some of these serious complications. So what are some of the signs and symptoms? Because, you know, a lot of the symptoms can overlap with other disease states. So there's swelling, unusual swelling in the feet and ankles. Like, for example, like one of our doctors, Dr. Wells, says, he's a rheumatologist in the Northeast, says that, like, if you wear socks and you get that little ring around your ankle, we all do, but if it's not gone in the morning, then that's a sign that there's, you know, unusual swelling that should have gone down overnight as you sleep. Increased blood pressure. And basically what this is talking about is not just a minor change in blood pressure, but like 10 millimeters of mercury. All of a sudden now you're starting to trend upward with blood pressure and nothing else has changed in your life. So that could be a sign, a symptom. And then the most prominent one, I think that is probably the most obvious one, is frothy, sudsy urine. Kind of looks like if you beat a whipping egg. It kind of looks frothy like that. So when you go to the doctor, what is the doctor looking for? They're looking for leaking of protein in the urine. They're looking for blood in the urine. They're looking for abnormal electrolyte levels. They're looking for a decrease in what's called your GFR. And that definition is on our website, and I'm sure it's on the GSK website as well as the rest of these names of things that they are testing for on our website, so that you become, you know, familiar with what these tests are, because that's important that you understand so you can advocate for yourself. And then inflammation and scarring in the kidneys is done with biopsy. So when you have the urine test, they are looking for protein in your urine, like I said, and the blood test is measuring the waste products and the breakdown of muscle and blood in your urine. And then the kidney biopsy is a confirmative diagnosis of, can be a confirmative diagnosis of lupus nephritis. So what we know is that any urinalysis that shows 0.5 grams or less means that, you know, you don't have a high level of protein in your urine, and you probably don't have kidney damage. But anything higher than that means that your kidneys are being damaged by the inflammation caused by lupus nephritis, and that the goal should be to get down to this 0.5 grams, and that you should be tested every 3 months. So we know that, you know, dealing with the daily struggles of, you know, lupus and lupus nephritis, having a full-time job and missing appointments, you know, occurred during the pandemic. Now that we are, you know, no longer completely virtual and people can go to doctor's appointments, as well as continue to do things virtually if they choose to do so, to keep up with their kidney health and prioritize your kidney health, because we don't want it to be too late. And so we know that peeing in the cup sucks. This is the campaign. And so, but kidney failure is definitely way worse. So we also know that a lot of patients have reported to us that it's tough to find a doctor sometimes that A, understands, B, accepts new patients, 3, knows how to treat this disease state. So we have what's called the Get Uncomfortable site. And on that Get Uncomfortable site is www.getuncomfortable. Not only can you, not only will you receive all the other educational resources that I mentioned, as well as the questionnaire that's important to take to the doctor's office with you. We have caregiver guides, and there's all kinds of resources on this site. You can either go to the site there, or you can scan the QR code to get more information. So I will stop sharing my screen there, and Catherine, I'm sure that you, not Catherine, I'm sorry, Terry, I'm sure that you probably would like to take back over. Let's see if
There you
they're,
go. Well, you know what, Quinn, thank you so much. And I love this campaign. I mean, it just really gets to, you know, as I said, our advocacy campaign was lupus still sucks. So it's funny how we thought of the same word, but we love this campaign. And that's one of the places where you've been so enlightening to me, is just talking about that acceptable level of protein in the urine. I mean, it's just, and that people aren't getting tested, and that doctors are seeing high levels and doing nothing about it. So it's
Right.
important. That's why it's important to educate patients, so that they know what to ask the doctor and they know what to push for. Correct?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I will just say that, you know, be the owner of your lab results. Know exactly what they mean. Don't let any line that is in the red go unnoticed or unexplained. And then, you know, also make sure that they're addressing, you know, what those levels are and telling you what your protein levels are, because these are your kidneys. You don't get another pair unless you get a transplant, and those are rare. So I would just highly encourage you to make sure. This is the other thing, is that the goal isn't to scare you. The goal is to inform you,
Right.
so that you can own it. You can own your kidney health. If you catch lupus nephritis early, you live a normal life.
Mhm.
If they keep those protein levels down. It's just that simple. Simple yet complicated, because they're not really doing it. So
Well, and
just want-
staying on top of it, you know, our board chair, Vivi Wen, she often shares, she was diagnosed in kidney failure. I mean,
yes,
she diagnosed with lupus. She went to DC, and her back hurt and her legs were swelling. She came home and went to the doctor. She was checked into the hospital and walked out of the hospital on dialysis. So it's, you know, we want to meet patients before that. That's why this awareness is so important. And this is why we're all, you know, I always say this, so cliched, we're all in this together. But we take the resources from GSK and Aurinia, and then we take the knowledge that people like Catherine and Sophia can impart upon us as people living with lupus. And then we share what their families go through. We take all of this, and we put it all in together, sandwich that with the resources from the Lupus Foundation, and we're headed in the right direction. We're headed in the right direction, but it takes diligence. It takes a thirst for knowledge about it. And you're right. You are the owner of your kidneys, and people have to be really responsible about their care. You know, gone are the days like I'm older than all you, but my parents took medications and had no idea what they were taking them for. They just did, oh, the doctor said I'm taking this, this, and this. He'd see 7 bottles lined up, and they had no idea why they were taking, what it meant. We still find that with some lupus patients. They're taking meds and they don't even know why they're taking it. Become educated. Why are you taking, you know, challenge your doctor. If you get your lab results and you don't understand them, challenge your doctor to give you the answers that you need. So Quinn, thank you so much.
you're welcome.
We
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
So next up, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about our trip to the Capitol. So we went to the Capitol on February the 23rd, and we had an opportunity to have 2 fabulous young people speak when we were there. And unfortunately, let me just do this here. Unfortunately, the acoustics were kind of lousy that day. And I just felt that you guys deserve to have your story shared. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, and he is Garrett Stoff, who is the son of a woman, Catherine Stoff, who is living with lupus. And I see Kevin in the background there, his dad. And we're just grateful to have you guys on tonight. And Garrett, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Garrett. I'm 14. I live with my mom and she has lupus. And I was just gonna talk about how it can affect others in the household that just live and have a mother that has lupus, and how it can affect other people around her.
Okay. Do you want to tell your story now, the one that you told at the Capitol?
Yes, I would like that.
Okay, go ahead. We would love that. Thank you.
I'm here to talk to you about how lupus doesn't only affect my mom, it also affects others around her, such as me. You might ask, why does it affect a kid? Well, I'm here to tell you it can and it does. There are many ways it can affect others around her. I love my mom so much, and it hurts me to see when she's sick. And the thought of her being sick hurts. Many days she has flares, and she doesn't even have enough energy to get out of bed. It hurts to see her like that. She is exhausted all the time. There is countless hospital visits, especially when she has a flare. It hurts to see my mom like this. This is how it affects people around her. Even when my mom is feeling well, I still have to live every day with the fear of her illness flaring up because it happens so quickly. I pray every night for God to make my mom well. I feel my mom is so brave and strong, even though her illness she still takes care of me and tries her hardest sometimes too hard. The closer we get to a cure, the closer I get to having my mom back. I miss having her at my lacrosse games, spending quality time with my mom. I miss going fishing with my mom. Please help us find a cure, not just for my family, but for other families afflicted by this disease. Thank you.
Garrett, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you had the opportunity to share that again. You are awesome, which is what I told your parents that day at the Capitol. You are awesome. And that's an awesome message. It's really, and including that we really want this cure for everybody, but you want your mom back. And I think you highlighted something important. We'll talk about it more when we get to the panel session. Talk about the unpredictability of it, that the fear that even when your mom's doing well, that tomorrow she may not be doing well. And I think that's the hardest thing, is that unpredictability of the disease.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm at this one, and we'll talk more in the panel, but thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm glad we're going to have it recorded in a way that everybody can really hear your words. That was phenomenal. And next up, we have another young woman, and this is a young woman who is living with lupus. And Sophia Galvis is one of our lupus ambassadors, as is Catherine. So Catherine, Garrett's mom is one of our ambassadors as well. And we're so proud of the work you guys do. Sophia is our youngest ambassador, and she is going to share her story about living with lupus as well. So Sophia, I'm going to let you take it away here.
Okay, perfect. I'm ready, excited for this. My name is Sophia Galvis, and I have lupus. 3 years, 7 months, and 23 days ago, I was diagnosed with lupus nephritis on my 12th birthday. Out of 365 days in the year, it happened to be my birthday, which is a lot of fun. All I can say is I was just terrified. You know, just a little girl laying in a hospital bed with failing organs. Next thing I know, doctors are coming in the room and telling me that I have stage 4 kidney disease and have to start chemotherapy. Fast forward 3.5 years later, I'm still taking chemo and probably will for the rest of my life. Not to mention all the other treatments, precautions, and mental illnesses that lupus has caused in my life. And this doesn't just affect me. It also affects the people around me, including my parents. They suffer from the effects of this just as much as I do. No one should have to worry about what organs their body is attacking, or if they're going to have to be hospitalized every time they get stressed. But the fact is, we do. We do worry about failing organs. We do worry about sun exposure and UV index. And we do worry about having to explain to others that we are struggling daily, even though we don't show it. And we do worry about how this disease will negatively impact our later lives. And that's why I became an advocate, to speak for those who have not yet been heard, to speak for the little girls out there who are given a lifelong illness, for the teenagers who are always asking themselves, why me? For all the people who have to fight a war just to stay alive. I'm fighting for a future that's free from lupus, a future where children, teenagers, and adults alike no longer have to endure the pain this disease has inflicted upon us. A future where lupus isn't a life sentence, but only a temporary inconvenience. I want to tell all the children, teenagers, and adults suffering from lupus that you are heard. We're standing here today for fighting for a future free of lupus. This has gone on for far too long, and it's time for a change. No more death, no more pain, and no more suffering. There's hope for the future, so please help us turn this dream into reality. Thank you.
Oh, Sophia, I'm telling you, you guys are killing me, both of you. I have to talk after this. That was just phenomenal once again. And it's just wonderful to hear words from our youth, because you guys are the future. You're the future, and you're going to be the ones carrying this sword as we fight for an end to lupus. But I do believe that when we're putting in the hands of two capable young people like Garrett and Sophia, that we are going to be handing it off to some really phenomenal advocates. And hopefully by the time it is handed off, we'll have a cure. And that's what we'll work for. That's our goal that we'll work for. So we're just going to kind of pull the panel in and just ask, I'm just going to ask a few questions of some of you. So Tracy, tell me a little bit about how lupus has affected your family from your point of view.
Hi, everyone. I am Sophia's mom, and it has been a journey for us. It has changed our lives dramatically. We were a family very outdoorsy, didn't think much about sunscreen or the shade. And Sophia was diagnosed when we were on vacation in the sun in the tropics. And we did not know that we were creating this perfect storm for this illness to surface. And we, when we were at the hospital, she just had this classic butterfly rash. I didn't know what a butterfly rash was, had no idea. I thought it was sunburn or something else going on. We had actually taken her to a dermatologist a few weeks earlier because the rash was just little right here, and they gave her some cream, didn't think it was anything. They just thought, oh, it's dry skin, it'll go away. And as she went to summer camp, we went on vacation, the rash grew. And coming back from our trip, we knew there were more symptoms. She had a fever, she was exhausted, she was struggling to breathe, and we knew we needed to get her to an ER right away. And so we took her to an ER. The doctor walked in and said pretty much right away, I'm pretty sure I know what she has. I want to test her for it. And I said, what does she have? What do you think she has? And they said lupus. And in my head, I think, okay, lupus does not affect children. So what are you talking about? That affects older women in our 30s and 40s is what in my head, I had placed lupus, and I didn't even know what lupus was. So then, of course, I started our journey in the hospital that week. Sophia was scared. She did not understand everything going on. It was also her birthday, and Scottish Rite, Eggleston, Choa, they did an amazing job celebrating her birthday and trying to keep her spirits up with everything going on. But of course, she knew something big was happening, and we were not sharing everything with her at the time of what they were telling us. We would share little bits here and there. And of course, as a mom, I'm just constantly crying and breaking down because this is my baby and I don't want anything to happen to her. I want it to be, I would rather take it on myself than this to be something happening in her life. But after that, we started going through treatments and we saw a lot of improvements, and she did come out of a flare. With lupus, if you're not familiar, when lupus is active, they call it a flare. When lupus is under control and it tests negative in your system, they call that remission. And so Sophia went through remission for a while. And then there's flares like everybody with lupus goes through. It can be sickness. It can be anything can trigger stress, hormones, anything can throw you into that flare. They can be mini flares. Thankfully, she has just experienced very minor flares. Her doctors have been phenomenal keeping lupus in check. Sophia has done a phenomenal job taking care of herself, being very conscious of the sun. Our lifestyle has changed, but even in that, we still find ways for it to be normal. We're still an outdoorsy family. We just find different times of the days when we're outdoorsy. We find different ways to be in the shade. I wear a watch, and Sophia does too, that has the UV index on it. So we're always very conscious of what is the sun doing outside? How is it going to affect us? And I mean, we joke, we say Sophia is going to have no wrinkles when she's 50 years old because she stays out of the sun and she's so amazing about it. But it does affect our family. My husband he sees a silver lining in everything, and Sophia definitely gets that from him. He sees it in a positive way. He's our rock. He's the strong one. Sophia, I mean, one day she looked at us and she said, I thank God that I have lupus because it's made our family so much stronger. She's 15 years old, but she acts like a 35-year-old. I mean, she's so mature. She has wisdom beyond her years. She can counsel other teenagers that are going through stuff because she knows how to handle a lot of that. And then on the other hand, I'm the crying mom over here that is emotional. And how do I be strong for my child? I wish she weren't going through this. And so we play that role, like what the dynamic is. And I mean, people will look at Sophia and they will say, wow, you're so beautiful and you're so happy. I know you have lupus, but you must be so healthy. You're doing so great. And they don't know that 3 hours before she was in the hospital, or 3 hours before she had to step out of class because she wasn't feeling well and she didn't know if she was going to pass out or throw up or what was going on. Nobody sees that invisible fight. And it's not just the physical, it's the mental. Like, I've read research where they said they don't know what comes first, anxiety or autoimmunes. But they go hand in hand. And the true struggle of what anxiety looks like with someone who is battling this every day. And I mean, she just handles it with so much grace. And it's so amazing to be her mom and to watch her and how strong she is and to love that strength in her. But not every moment is perfect. We have good days. We have tough days. We have good hours. We have tough hours. And she continues to fight forward and put on the best face that she can to say, hey, lupus doesn't have me, I have lupus. And so it's amazing to hear that. I heard Quinn say, hey, when you go to the doctor, definitely take the results into your own hands. Like if there's something in the red, question it. When things pop up, question it. And I was keeping a spreadsheet, like you can go on the app, you can get all your results. I can see on the spreadsheet how things are progressing. I look everything up to know exactly what every result means. I know that the doctors are like, oh, here she comes again, because I'm coming in like, hey, what does this mean? What do we need to do? What do we need to, and the doctors are used to like, okay, we're looking at this whole picture. A lot of things I didn't understand. And speaking to a lot of parents with children who are newly diagnosed, there's so many questions, there's so much exhaustion, there's so many emotions that go into, my child now has this, what is it, how do we treat it? And everybody's lupus looks different. Even if, like Sophia was diagnosed with lupus nephritis stage 4, as she said, but even other people who are diagnosed with lupus nephritis stage 4, their journey looks very different. And so I can share with parents, this is what worked for us, this is what is working for us, this is what we do, but it's probably going to look different for you guys. The triggers are different, the treatments are different, the doctors respond differently. But Terry, as you said, we're all in this together, and educating parents, educating each other, getting out there what lupus is. We went back to the Capitol a few weeks ago for another event. And people who had seen Sophia there for the lupus in February just walked right up to her and were giving her, like legislators in Congress were giving her hugs because they remember her from when she came there to speak about lupus. And it was amazing. Like, we've got to get it out there. We've got to let people know. We've got to let parents know these are the symptoms of what you're looking for. Tell the dermatologist. A little rash on the face. Like, in my head, I think if she had been diagnosed a month earlier, could we have avoided so much of the treatment and medication that she went through if they had done a skin biopsy and said, hey, this is a lupus rash, instead of saying it was dermatitis or something else that they said it was. I play a lot of what ifs, and I shouldn't, but I do. But I think it's just educating the medical field, educating the schools. I see Sophia, I'm so proud of her because she doesn't go into school and tell people that she has lupus. She doesn't want people seeing her as weak. So it's not out there that she has it. But she has informed her teacher. She does have the 504 to let them know that she can drink water, she can go to the bathroom, whatever she needs. And when she feels a certain way or certain whatever is going on, she will stand up and go tell her teacher, hey, I need to step out for a minute. And if the teacher ever questions it, she says, well, per my 504, I need to go out into the hallway and do this. And great. Yes, absolutely. The teachers like get on board. And so we've experienced a lot of very supportive educators and medical professionals that we're very grateful for. All of that to say, Terry, I don't remember your original question, and I just talked a lot.
Oh, you know what? You were fantastic. You did exactly, how it affects you and how it affects the family. That was terrific. And thank you for sharing that and from that perspective. So and this is what tonight is about. It's about the different perspectives and how people are affected by lupus. So with that, I want to turn to Catherine and Kevin and talk a little bit. Catherine, I know you're living with lupus, and Kevin, you're married to somebody living with lupus. Talk a little bit to that.
So, okay, let's talk.
We're gonna rearrange.
We're rearrange.
There you go.
So Catherine and I met in January of 2019. So I can remember back, I think I was late high school, maybe early in my military career, that I had heard of lupus. But most of what I heard wasn't coming from doctors, or it was coming out of the news. And there was this new lupus that some doctors were diagnosing, and other doctors thought it was a scam, and then it just kind of fell off, fell out of the news like a lot of things do. And I never really followed up with it, never kept up with it, really haven't kept up with much of medical stuff ever, period. Typical, guy, I don't go to the doctor unless I'm gonna die. So we met and we started talking, and things started getting serious, and she told me she had lupus. Well, the last thing I had heard about lupus was this is scam diagnosis that, some doctors are writing and some doctors aren't. And there's this whole battle in the medical field, 20 years ago. So I was like, well, I didn't know anything about it. And, but I fell in love with Catherine, whole and wholeheartedly. And
Tell them about the infusions.
yeah, but to see what she went through, infusions, what was it, every 2 weeks, some other IV,
Rituxan.
huh?
Rituxan
What was those Rituxan
every 6 months. Rituxan
Yeah, see how well I can keep up with it.
it's a lot.
There was infusions every couple of weeks, and then another IVIG or Rituxan, or every 6 months, and the chemo, and just everything. I think Tracy hit on it, that she's so proud of Sophia for not going to school and saying, telling people that she has lupus because she doesn't want to be viewed as weak. I'm going to tell you right now, ladies, the people that are dealing with this illness on a day-to-day basis are the strongest people I have ever met in my life.
Yeah.
To see my wife, the woman that I love, in bed, for days after these infusions, or during a mini flare, or just simply because she wears herself out trying to keep up with the quote unquote normal healthy people. It's heartbreaking. It's painful. You know, I'm a traditional masculine role. My job is to provide and to protect my family. But when she's in those stages, I'm completely helpless. You know, there is nothing that I can do except for just to love her and support her, to help ensure her rest, and to make her as comfortable as I can, but I can't take it away. You know, even though I pray for that every day, God, give it to me. Let me carry this burden. But we can't, you know, it wasn't given to us to carry, and it won't be. Um, you know, it's, you know, Garrett touched on it, you know, she can have a, you know, great day, week, month, and then boom, flare, and she's down for 2, 3 days a week. You know, you don't know. You know, in the
Like
hospital,
ER visit.
ER visits, urgent care visits, you know, you just it's so unpredictable and so, I don't even know the word I'm looking for. Just there's no rhyme, reason, pattern. It's just completely unpredictable.
Well, and it sounds like, you know, one of the words you might be reaching for is disruptive, because it is so unpredictable. You know, you
Ex-
don't know, you make plans, and all of a sudden you can't keep those plans
Yeah.
necessarily because a lupus flare comes up. And I think Garrett touched on that very well, that was part of his fear. The fear of that, you know, gee, she's doing great today, but will she be doing great tomorrow?
Precisely.
Catherine, from your point of view as a mom of somebody living with lupus, and Kevin, that was so well put and so heartfelt.
So my lupus attacks my heart. I've had pericarditis 5 times. You know, it's very difficult. The guilt, the shame. As a mom, I feel sometimes for not being able to do everything for my family that I want to do. When I have to take a nap at 7 o'clock at night because I'm so exhausted, and Kevin has to cook dinner and I can't be there with the family. It's really hard. And I just hope and pray every day that a cure comes about so that the endless fatigue or these ER visits or these symptoms that come up that I don't even know where they're coming from. Like it's just a lot of stress and a lot of, like Tracy was saying, anxiety. It's you know, it brings about a lot of anxiety not knowing what's going on with your body or why it's happening. I know it's lupus, but I don't know. The hard part is you don't know if you have the flu or if you're sick with lupus, or distinguishing between the two. And I just hope and pray for a cure. That's all I hang on to. And hopefully I don't, my doctor looked at me and said, if you get pericarditis one more time, you're in trouble. And so just trying to keep myself healthy and go to my doctor's visits and really do what I need to do for myself, for my family, is so important.
Yes, but Catherine, as you're talking about your challenges and doing all that, people need to know how much you're accomplishing while you're doing this. So you're not taking this lying down, my dear. This woman is getting
No,
a
I'm
master's
not.
degree in social work, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I go to UGA I'm getting my MSW in social work. I go to school 2 days a week and I go to practicum 2 days a week, and I work full time from home. I work 4 10-hour days. So I am under a lot of stress and pressure, but I've always been of the type to where I'm like, I'm not going to let this illness get me down. Like, it's not going to get the best of me. I have 1 year left in my degree, and then I'll have my MSW. I'm looking to get licensure so that I can be an LCSW. And I'm also looking into getting my PhD for social work. So I've got a lot of work ahead of me, and I'm not going to let this get me down. Like, I have dreams and goals and aspirations, and it is easy to fall into the, oh my gosh, I don't feel good, the depression, all that. But I just pick myself up and I go, and not everyone can do that. And I completely understand that. That's why there are therapy and social workers and treatments and all that for us. But it doesn't really have to be, like they say, a death sentence. Like
Right.
you can overcome it.
And it is about balance. And, I want to say something to all the lupus warriors who are on here tonight, and to Catherine and to Sophia. We did a support group retreat a few years ago, and everybody went around and they told their stories, detailed stories. I mean, sometimes in the room we were laughing, other times we were crying, just telling the tragedies and the triumphs of living with lupus. But then in the end, it was, I made everybody stand up. Good. I said, you're here, but you're still standing. You're still standing. Y'all are still standing. You're not giving up. You're not giving into this. And from what I'm hearing from both of you and from both families, as part of this family unit is really about support and supporting that person living with lupus in positive ways. And that support doesn't mean, Kevin, we saw you get choked up when you were speaking. Tracy, you talked about how you cry about it. It doesn't mean, support doesn't mean lack of emotion. Sometimes it's very deep felt emotions, and it's letting know when those emotions have to be let out. Garrett talking about the unpredictability of it. It is sometimes, I think people think that caregivers need to be reserved and in the background. No, they need to show the true meaning of how they're feeling and give an honest appraisal to the person that they're giving care to and to family. Does that make sense? Y'all, that kind of honesty is helpful in the family unit. I do want to talk about one thing quickly here, though, and not even quickly, is mental health. I think we downplay mental health. It's a national issue on every front. But when you come to lupus, it really is. When we did a presentation, I think it was my first year working at the Lupus Foundation, way back in 2007. We had a psychiatrist who got up and she talked about depression. And she held up a list of the signs of depression, and she held up the list of the symptoms of lupus. And they were almost the same. The fatigue, the joint pain, headaches. You did just so many of those symptoms. It's hard to tell which is which all the time. And I think that's what you were saying, Catherine, is, am I depressed, or am I sick, or am I lazy, or and that's where that guilt comes in. And that guilt has to go away. That shaming guilt has to just go away, and really, really count on, really assess where you're at. And sometimes you can't tell what it is. But if your body's telling you to rest, whether it's depression or it's lupus, your body is telling you to rest. Deal with the mental health issues that go around it. Talk to a counselor, talk to your parents, talk to your family, call into your support system. Catherine, you talk about, Kevin having to make dinner and do that. Let him make dinner when you can't. Do that. Be grateful that you've got that support system. How lucky are you? Sophia, you've got your mother and your father and your family, and, celebrate that support system that you have. Tracy, when you're talking about, how upset you can get, I hope you can find resources for talking to people, for venting that. So Tracy, I'm going to put you on the spot because I'm going to ask you that. So, you talked about how upset it can get you. How do you deal with that?
Well, I am going to go ahead and throw out there. I've already cried twice tonight on the webinar.
Oh.
One time when Sophia was talking, one time when Kevin was talking. I'm a basket case over here. There's so many ways that I have to handle what I'm going through. First and foremost for me is my faith. Just relying on God, church, spirituality, prayer constantly, for me is one of the biggest things. However, I know people say, well, if you just pray more, you'll trust God's plan for Sophia's life and for your life. And I'm like, okay, it's not that easy. It's also like when people say, oh, if Sophia would just do yoga and stay out of the sun, she'll be fine with lupus. That's not how that works. We've been told that before. So that's not how that works. But with my mental health, and I think even Sophia's, that we just, I've handled it so differently over these 3.5, almost 4 years. It's caused myself to have physical issues as well, just how I handled it. I know as caregivers, we all handle things so differently. My husband, again, he's our rock, and he's strong, and he's positive. He sees the good, and she's gonna, yeah, they're gonna take care of her. Like, we see how the medicine is gonna treat her, and I'm over here, I think I'm fine, and then I start crying, or I start having the anxiety attacks. And so I did have to go to my doctor, and after I sought therapy, I've been to a therapist and talked about it. I am hard on the therapist, because if I go to a therapist who does not have a child dealing with a health issue, I don't feel like they understand the gravity of what I'm going through. So it has been hard finding someone who can relate to what I'm dealing with. And that's why I think, Catherine, you're going to be phenomenal at being a social worker, because you will be able to relate 100% with people going through an illness. I have gone to my doctor as well, and I am on anxiety medicine, which helps tremendously to deal with this, to help me see that not every little flare or every little symptom is she's not going to die from it. That I think Quinn said, like, this isn't a life sentence of death. This is how do we maintain, how do we control this in our life? So it's exercise, diet, it's like this perfect storm of so many things. And at the end of the day, that doesn't all work. Like, prayer, medication, exercise, diet, I still cry. I still have anxiety attacks. I still freak out. I have to have people that I rely on. And thankfully, through the Lupus Foundation, 3 years ago, it was a few months after Sophia was diagnosed, we had been told that there were a couple of other moms there at the Lupus conference that was held in October. And I made a really solid connection with one of those moms, and she's been there for us the last 3.5 years answering questions. And now I find myself able to turn around and do the same thing for other moms who have children who are newly diagnosed. And even when they're new in the process and they're like, I'm so sorry that I'm having to lean on you and cry so much and ask all these questions, it also gives me comfort of being able to have them in my life and share this commonality of what we're going through. So I don't know, there's like 10 things that I do. At the end of the day, it doesn't all work. So
it's like a cocktail that you have to mix up.
it is.
You have to mix up different at all different points and do that. And it isn't always easy. I personally, I will share, I've got a child who has a disability. And when she was diagnosed, I couldn't be alone. I mean, I was like, darn it. Every time as long as I kept myself with people, I was fine. But I get in that car by myself and I cry. And you know what? I cried until I could deal with it. And now I deal with it. I mean, that's, of course, she's grown and we're to a point where she's dealing with it very well. But in the beginning, I'd be sweeping the kitchen floor crying, just trying to figure it out. And I think a lot of that had to do with fear for the future, because I didn't know, and awfulizing. There was a lot of awfulizing going on, like, okay, this is what the worst case scenario, but she's doing very well right now. But I can understand that feeling of out of control. And it takes therapy, it takes exercise, it takes all those different things to try to come to terms with it.
I think also something that, sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
When Sophia was first diagnosed, I was pretty strong. I was this rock of, okay, we're going to get through this. We're going to go to these treatments. We're going to go here. We're going to go spend 8 hours at the infusion center. I'm going to go work every day for 10 hours. Like, I was just going through the motions of we're going to get this done. And I've been told that a lot of parents, but also a lot of people who are first diagnosed in illness, we are kind of in this denial phase and survival phase. And it's when everything kind of quiets down and you go into the lull of, okay, we've got this, they're doing better. That's when it hits. And nobody told me that. And it took like almost a year after Sophia's diagnosis that I started crying. I would be walking down the hallways at my work and I would just start crying. I'm like, what is happening? Like, what just triggered that? Like these weird reactions that I wouldn't know what was going on. And therapists and doctors help tell me, like, you've been holding it in this whole time. And your body, if you hold it in, your body's going to find a way to release it. Whether it's through an anxiety attack, whether it's through crying, whether it's through a physical manifestation of another autoimmune disease or having the flu, whatever it is, your body is going to find a way to release that pressure point. And so I do think the first 3 years of her diagnosis, it was super hard and I was super angry. I cried all the time, like you said, Terry. In the beginning, we cry all the time and I couldn't be alone, like the shower and cars. And that was when I cried.
Exactly.
And I think now we're more in a normalization. So there's a lot less crying. There's a lot less anxiety. We know what's coming, but then every time we go to the doctors, the results come back different and it's a roller coaster. And so we have to take one day at a time. It gets easier, but it's one day at a time.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And you can't, I think also in case of both Sophia and Catherine and your families, I do think that getting involved through advocacy and through speaking and doing that is empowering. And because you're taking an active role in changing the future. You're taking that active, you become part of the solution. You're part of the solution. And I don't think that that's always easy from the beginning. And Tracy, we came to this with the Parent Project. We had one of the parents in that group said when her daughter was first diagnosed, she didn't really want to talk to anybody else about it. It was just about her and her daughter and her world there. She didn't really want to, she just couldn't think of anything outside of that. She didn't want to be part of a support group. So it's different for everybody. And I think that's, not only is this disease so heterogeneous that where it manifests so different in different people, but it's just when you take into account just the human nature that for some people they're diagnosed with lupus and they can talk the wallpaper off the wall and right away. Other people can't. It takes them forever until they can come out and talk about it. We had one woman who has become a great friend of the foundation. She came to a seminar back in 2011, cried through the entire seminar. So I gave her information to go to the LACES support group over in Decatur. She cried through the first 6 months. Every month she went, she cried. And now she's turned around and she's a huge support for other people living with lupus. But she had to come to her terms with it. And that's it. You know, when you talk about support in families, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, I think what's really important is to give each other in the family the grace to develop the skills and the coping skills at their pace and let them come to terms with the disease, whether they're the person living with it or the family member. Let them come to terms with on their time and their schedule, and have grace and patience with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Hey, Mr. I kind of wanted to a little bit piggyback off of what Tracy was saying earlier.
Mhm.
I think as a caretaker, though, I think there's a lot of fear from both sides, from both the person living with the lupus as well as their family members around, and not just only of the fear of the disease, but like we're talking about mental health, but the state of resentment as well. Catherine's even expressed to me, you know, that she doesn't want me to resent her for not being able to get up or for me having to cook dinner. And it's like, that's my job. I knew what I was getting into, you know, I had that luxury, that I knew what I was getting into, and that I could never resent her for not feeling well. But but I think that fear still exists, and I think it exists in a lot more households than mine. I think a lot of people living with lupus are afraid to ask for that help, and possibly, and I think a lot of them may have family members and or slash caretakers that do kind of harbor that resentment, and hold it against them as well.
But that's where getting involved will
But yeah.
help.
Right.
Getting
right.
involved with the Lupus Foundation and really understanding what your partner or your significant other, your husband or wife are going through.
Mhm. We had a health and wellness seminar at Piedmont Hospital years ago, and a man stood up after we did the Q&A. He stood up and he started to cry, and he said, "I'm here with my wife today as a last resort. She's asking me for a divorce because and she had lupus." And he said, "I'm here." And he went there and he heard all the different stories of people living with lupus. And he said, "I didn't get it. I didn't get it." It was such a cool awakening for him, though, that she wasn't lazy and she wasn't faking, and it was serious. And just to hear that, it's a shame that it took hearing it from other people, but sometimes that involvement and in the family unit for people to know that there are other people going through this, that it's not unique. So speak to that, Catherine. I see you shaking your head.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Also you got to take into effect backgrounds and culture. And people come from different backgrounds and culture. In social work, we will learn a lot about cultural competency and just really understanding that people have different ways of thinking, different views of thinking, and not everyone's is right or wrong. It's just the way we were brought up. And I forgot your question, but that feeds a lot into the home life, and the caretaker role is a very big one. It can be burdensome. It can be happy when our test results come back good and everything's good.
I disagree.
You disagree?
I absolutely disagree.
Oh Lord, he always
I
disagrees with
disagree.
me. Tell me.
Oh, I disagree that it's burdensome. Burdensome. I
Well,
think that's the wrong word.
that's the way I feel.
Somebody that you love can never be a burden.
There you go. There you go. Well,
All
that's a sign of a very healthy relationship. And
Thank you.
and I've seen it in the two of you guys, Kevin. I've seen it. You're just an amazing man. And like you said, you knew what you were getting into with Catherine, and you got it. I think sometimes what can be hard is when there's a relationship, when it starts, especially spousal, when you marry somebody healthy and then all of a sudden they get lupus, they might not, that understanding might be a little bit different. I'm not sure. But it is, Kevin, I'm glad that you just make this clear on a regular basis to Catherine. Every time I've talked to you, that is not a burden. It's not a burden to care for Catherine.
No, it's not. It never has been. It never will be. And it never should be. In any relationship. It's just I
We're
don't
gonna have
know,
to get you involved in a caregivers class.
Miss Terry, you already know what I'm itching to ask you about. So
We'll talk later.
What's that?
Oh, she said, tell me.
I said, you know what I'm itching to ask you about.
The fishing?
The ride for lupus.
The ride for lupus. I know. You know what? He's not doing it this year because he hurt himself, but I've got a bunch of people. I've got to bring a bunch of
My
people.
volunteers tribute.
Okay. We will, I promise. Okay.
We're still gonna make it happen.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen. It's so cool to get involved in efforts like that. We just, so this guy that did this ride for Lupus up in Alto, Georgia, he did the coolest thing. He did this thing where he raffled off a bottle of water. And he had a pastor come and bless it. And he blessed this bottle of water, and he was expecting to get maybe 50, 60 bucks for this bottle of water. You know, these generous bike riders are going to throw it in. He got $1,000 for the bottle of water, for that blessed water. And it was just people being generous to the Lupus Foundation, because we benefit from it. He chooses every year to give some of his proceeds to somebody living with lupus directly, but we become the beneficiaries of it. And it was just a just such a cool thing to see. Just a cool thing to see. But we'll have to get that up and get that going. But in terms of families here, so if you were to name one thing, I'm gonna ask Tracy and Sophia and Garrett and Catherine and Kevin, one thing, what would be if somebody came to you and said, I'm struggling, my family is struggling with my diagnosis or my child, what would be your one suggestion? I'll start with the stops here.
Garrett's itching to talk. He unmuted himself. Okay, what would it be?
I've had to think about this. Like I've thought about this. It's for me, it's like I can write stuff out, I can speak, but like when it comes to like talking like to straight like just one person, it's harder. But the best advice that I could give them was that you have to understand what that family member or friend or whatever they are to them, that they have to recognize that they have lupus and they're gonna have their flares. They're gonna have days that they can't get out of bed, days that they don't have any energy, and they have to understand that, and that it's gonna be hard, but it's something you kind of have to push through with them.
That was good, Garrett.
I like that. I like that. Push through with them. You
Push
become a partner with them. I like that. Okay, Catherine and Kevin.
I'd probably tell them it's not the struggle, it's the climb, and just the view from the climb, and just that way of thinking and changing your mindset helps so much. There's therapy for that, for changing your mindset and your ways of thinking. And I want to share with everyone, there's an app called I Am, and it's a motivational app. And I had Garrett download it on his phone, and his way of thinking, it's purely positive quotes all day, every day that they just send to you. And his way of thinking as a 14-year-old child has really changed. So I don't know.
How did you hear about that, Catherine?
Facebook.
Social media.
But
Not TikTok.
yeah, it's called I Am, and it'll put your name in the motivational
Oh, look at her.
quote.
Look at that.
Yeah. Thank you, Terry. And it'll say, Catherine Soft can do anything today. And I'm like, yes, I can.
I like that. I'm downloading it tonight. There we go. That's
It's
awesome.
free and it's phenomenal.
That's great. And that's positive affirmations.
Yeah, positive affirmation.
Right. Okay, Kevin, what would you be your one piece of advice?
It's so hard to narrow it down to one piece of advice because lupus is such a obscurity, for lack of better words, that it doesn't have it doesn't manifest itself the same in every person or every case or every situation or even in every flare. So I'm going to kind of take a couple of things and combine them into one, if you'll allow me to. And that's be understanding, be compassionate, and do your research. Understand what you're dealing with.
There you go. There you go. Be an educated, not only lupus patient, but family member.
Absolutely.
Look at the two of you. Okay, Sophia, how about you? If you were to give a piece of advice to somebody, what would it be?
I would say that it's not going to be like this forever. It's going to get better. And there's going to be ups and downs, but it will get better. Because, I mean, nobody's perfect all the time, of course, and we can't always be happy. So no matter how much therapy, how much we pray, or just in general, we can't always be happy. We're always going to have moments where we cry. So it will get better, but it's also going to be hard first too.
There you go. Okay, how about you, Tracy?
Well, I agree a lot with what Kevin's saying. I was hoping he wasn't going to take what I was going to say, but yeah, I agree with what he was saying, especially do the research. But I think my thing that I live by is take one day at a time, because my worry, my anxiety is what is tomorrow going to look like? What is 5 years? What is 10 years, 30 years going to look like? And I heard a quote by Corrie ten Boom, who her and her family went to the concentration camp. They were Germans hiding Jews in their house, and her family was captured and her whole family died around her. And her quote is why do we worry about tomorrow when today it has so many worries of its own, and we're just draining the strength from today and giving it to tomorrow. And I need the strength for today. So my philosophy is I'm not going to think about tomorrow. I'm going to enjoy every moment of today with Sophia, and find the positive in everything that I possibly can. Like Catherine and Kevin were going back and forth about she feels like a burden. He's saying she's not a burden. Sophia has gone through that too, of I'm a burden, our family changes plans, we do this, we do that. And my husband's done such a great job of coming behind and saying, yeah, we used to do that, but now we get to do this, which is amazing. Like we've gotten into so many new activities, and I changed my job. I used to teach a face-to-face school. Now I teach virtually so that I can have a more flexible schedule and be there whenever Sophia needs me, or my other daughter as well, or my family. And I get to work from home. I get to have this really short commute from upstairs to downstairs, and I get to wear stretchy pants and not worry about professional clothes every day. Lupus is terrible and is horrible, but it's also brought so many great things into our life as well. And I'm just going to focus on today, and I'm not going to worry about tomorrow's test results and tomorrow's whatever, because I always go to the what is the worst case scenario? And I can't live in that, because it's going to shorten my life. It's going to shorten Sophia's life. Sophia feeds off of my anxiety. So I can't live in that. We have to focus on today. And you're not a burden.
Go. Well, you guys have just been really, really fantastic tonight. And there's been a lot of great insights. You know, we've recorded this call so that we can share what has been shared tonight. I want to thank you all. I want to thank Quinn, who is still on the line, for talking about lupus and lupus nephritis and the importance of staying on top of those tests. And I think that's really part of the empowerment. The empowerment process is not only getting involved in advocacy, really taking care of yourself and taking care of your family and making sure that you are on top of the meds that you're taking and going to your doctor's visits and, really understanding your symptoms and what you're going through. So I want to thank Quinn for being on. I want to thank Catherine and Kevin and Garrett and Sophia and Tracy. And this has been just a wonderful seminar. And we are grateful to all of you, and we hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.